The night he found her, the rain came down hard and sideways. Not the kind that taps gently at your window, but the kind that soaks you through in seconds and makes the world feel colder than it should. She was lying near the edge of the old fishing pier. Face down still, her hair spread across the wet wood, one hand hung over the side just inches above the dark water below. He saw her as he passed, and at first he kept walking. He told himself it wasn't his business, that someone else would come, that maybe he hadn't really seen what he thought he saw, but something in him wouldn't let it go, so he stopped, turned back, and knelt beside a stranger in the rain. It was a simple choice, the kind most people wouldn't think twice about, but that one moment would change his life in ways he could never have imagined. Because the truth was, she hadn't come to that pier by accident, and nothing about what followed would be simple. His name was Park Joon-seo. He was 34 years old, far from home, and carrying more than he let anyone see. He had grown up in Busan, South Korea, the second son in a family that expected quiet strength and steady responsibility. He had learned early not to speak about what weighed on him. Some things he was taught were better kept to yourself. 2 years ago, something happened that made sleep difficult. Since then, long walks had become his way of keeping the nights manageable. Work brought him to Lagos. His family's shipping business was expanding, and he had been sent to help oversee operations along the coast. It was practical, temporary, something to focus on. He rented a small flat in Victoria Island. He tried in quiet ways to adjust. He learned a few Igbo greetings to be polite, got used to the heat, the noise. The rhythm of a place that felt nothing like home. Food surprised him most, the spice especially. The first time he tried jollof rice, it was too much. The second time he found himself finishing the plate anyway. It wasn't comfort exactly, but it was something. That night he couldn't sleep, so he walked down past the pier, past the sound of the water and the wind, and that's when he saw her, lying there, still, and from that moment on, nothing in his life would remain the same. Her name was Adaeze Okafor. 29 years old, born in Enugu. Raised partly by her grandmother in the village, and partly by the streets of Lagos, which means she had been educated in two completely different kinds of survival. Her grandmother had taught her that a woman's strength lives in her stillness. Lagos had taught her that stillness gets you trampled. She had a degree in accounting that no firm wanted because she lacked the right connections. She had a voice that could quiet a room, not because it was loud, but because when Adaeze spoke, she meant every word, and people felt that. She had a laugh that started in her belly and ended somewhere above her head, and she had a wound, old, deep, the kind that never fully closed, a wound with a name. That name was Emeka. But we will get to Emeka. When Joon-seo knelt beside her on that pier, she was not dead, but she was not far from it. There was blood at her temple. Her breathing was shallow. Her fingers were curled around a small gold cross pendant so tightly that her knuckles had gone pale. He checked her pulse. He called for an ambulance. He stayed. That last part was the important one. He stayed at the hospital. The nurses assumed he was a foreign businessman who had done a good deed. They thanked him and told him he could leave. He sat down in the plastic chair nearest the door and waited. He did not know exactly why. He only knew that leaving felt wrong. That the image of her hand holding that cross in the rain had reached something inside him he had sealed off a long time ago. When Adaeze opened her eyes at 2:30 in the morning, the first thing she saw was a Korean man asleep in a plastic hospital chair, his jacket draped over his knees. His head tilted at an angle that would give him neck pain for 3 days. She stared at him for a long time, then she whispered to no one, "Why is this man still here?" He heard her. He opened his eyes. He looked at her directly and said, "Because you were alone." She did not know what to do with that sentence, so she looked away. But something in her chest shifted. Some stubborn piece of her that had been locked tight for years turned slightly, like a key in a jammed lock finding its groove for the first time. They met again 3 days later when she returned to the pier. She needed to stand in the daylight at the place where she had fallen. Her grandmother had always said, "Go back to the place that broke you and let it see that you are still standing." He was there because he walked there every night. He saw her from a distance, recognized her braids, and approached slowly. "You came back," he said. "Yes," she said. "You're the man from the hospital, Park Joon-seo," he said and bowed slightly. A habit. She looked at the bow and laughed, that belly laugh, the one that started low and ended high. He blinked at the laugh, surprised. Then slowly he smiled, the kind that doesn't happen on purpose, the kind that escapes. Adaeze, she said. It means daughter of a king in Igbo. Then you should not have been lying on the pier, he said quietly. She went completely still. Then she looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. No, she said, I should not have been. They talked on the pier in the evenings. He told her about Busan. About the sea there, colder, more honest, he said. She told him about her grandmother's compound in Enugu, the mango tree, the harmattan wind dusting everything gold in the mornings. He brought Korean instant noodles one evening as a joke. She cooked them on a small kerosene stove right there on the pier, added pepper and crayfish without asking, and when he tasted what she had made, his entire face changed. What is this? Your noodles, she said, just fixed. He ate the whole pot. She taught him Igbo phrases. He taught her Korean proverbs. They mispronounced everything and laughed so hard about it that the night watchman at the port came to investigate. Neither of them named what was growing between them, but it was growing. Quietly, steadily, the way the tide moves, without announcement, without asking permission. The first crack came from his family. His mother called every Sunday evening, Korean time, very early Monday morning in Lagos. Joon-seo always answered, because not answering was not something sons in his family did. She asked how work was going. He said well. She asked if he was eating. He said yes. Then very casually, the way Korean mothers ask things that are never casual, she asked if he had made any asterisk friends. He paused too long. Mothers always hear the pause, he told her. A careful, edited fraction of the truth. A woman he had met, local, kind. She had been in trouble and he had helped her. The silence after that contained an entire argument compressed into 3 seconds. Local, asterisk his mother said, not a question, a verdict. Yes, Iyama, Joon-seo, you are there for work. Not for, I know why I am here. Do you? He ended the call more gently than he felt. He sat looking at his hands for a long time, thinking about all the things his mother had not said because she did not need to. He came from a family where reputation was currency, where marriage was strategy, where a son's choices reflected on everyone who carried the same name. He had lived inside this his whole life, grateful for the shelter, quietly resentful of the walls. The second crack came from Adaeze's side. She had told her cousin Ifoma about Joon-seo. Ifoma was loud, fiercely loving, and had opinions about everything. Korean man, Ifoma said, we are friends. You're already defending him. That means it's already more than friendship. Adaeze did not answer because Ifoma was right. The neighborhood had started talking. Lagos people talk with their whole chest. Comments came, small ones first, then louder. A woman at the market. A man outside her building who laughed at something she refused to repeat. She felt it, the grinding weight of being something other people felt entitled to judge. She had carried this kind of weight before, for different reasons. She knew its shape. She knew how it settles on the shoulders and whispers. Maybe they are right. Maybe this is foolish. Maybe you are becoming a story people tell as a warning. She began pulling back. Shorter conversations, a canceled meeting, then another. Joon-seo noticed every single one. He said nothing. He waited. But inside him, the old familiar ache was getting louder, the one that told him he was always standing on the outside of something. Then came Emeka. His full name was Emeka Osai. 41 years old, smooth in the way that dangerous men are smooth, the kind of man who made every room feel like he had already won whatever game was being played inside it. He had been Adaeze's employer, then her boyfriend, then the architect of the worst 18 months of her life. He ran money, not his own money. He moved it, claimed it, redistributed it for men whose names never appeared on any document. He needed an accountant he could trust, and Adaeze, young, talented, desperate for stable work, had not seen what she was walking into until she was already inside it. When she finally understood the full picture, she was terrified. She had tried to leave quietly. Emeka had not allowed quiet exits. She had made one desperate decision, passing certain documents to a government official who had been investigating Emeka's network, not out of heroism, out of self-preservation. She had kept copies of everything, hidden in a flash drive sewn into the lining of a worn leather bag her grandmother had given her years ago. A bag she had never thrown out because her grandmother's hands had sewn it, and some things you simply cannot release. When Emeka's associates discovered what she had done, they came for her. At the pier, that was what the blood had been about. That was why she had not gone there by accident. She had not told Joon-seo any of this because she was afraid. Not of him, but of what she would see in his eyes when he knew. the thing she feared most was not anger, it was the slow cooling of someone's regard. The moment when warmth becomes politeness and politeness becomes distance. She had lived through that before, and she could not survive it again from him. When he found out, not from her, but from a police officer who came to his building, asking questions about the man who had called the ambulance that night, he drove to her apartment immediately. He knocked, she opened the door and saw in his face that he knew everything. She stepped back, crossed her arms, lifted her chin the way she always did when she was preparing to be dismissed. "Go ahead," she said. He looked at her for a long, steady moment. "Why didn't you call me?" he said. Her arms dropped. "What, when they came for you at the pier?" "Before it happened, why didn't you call me? I would have come." She stared at him. She had prepared for accusation and received something she had no defense against. "You didn't think I would come," he said, not as an accusation, as a quiet, painful recognition. Joon-seo, "I would have come, Adaeze." 3 weeks later, a mutual business connection invited them both separately to a formal event in a ballroom in Victoria Island, chandeliers. Men in agbatas, women in silk, the sharp smell of competing money. Emeka was there. He moved through the room like a man who had never faced consequences for anything. He spotted Adaeze within minutes. Joon-seo was standing 12 feet away with a glass of water, watching a conversation he could see but not hear. He watched Adaeze's shoulders rise. Watched her jaw tighten. Watched her shake her head, once, twice, the kind of shaking that says asterisk, no asterisk, and please, and leave me alone simultaneously. He watched the man lean closer. He watched Adaeze's eyes scan the room with the desperate look of someone searching for an exit or an anchor. Her eyes found him. Across 12 feet of ballroom floor, across every language and cultural wall between them, her eyes found him and stayed. He put down his glass and walked toward her, not fast, not aggressively. With the measured, deliberate calm of a man who has made a decision and is not reversing it, he stepped to her side and stood there. He did not touch her. He did not speak to Emeka. He simply placed himself beside her in the way that communicates, in every language on earth, she is not alone. Emeka looked at him, a long, assessing look loaded with contempt. Then he said something in Igbo. Adaeze replied in Igbo. Her voice was steady and final. When she later translated for Joon-seo, she said she had told Emeka precisely which documents she had retained, which names she had recorded, and exactly which authorities would receive everything before sunrise if anything happened to her or to the man standing beside her. Emeka left, but his eyes said this was not finished. Outside the venue, waiting for a car, Emeka reappeared, this time with 2 men, this time without the social performance to restrain him. A shove, words built to humiliate. Emeka looked at Joon-seo and said in English, slowly, deliberately, "Go back to your country, foreigner. You cannot protect her here. You don't even belong here. When you leave, and you will leave, I will still be here." Joon-seo did not respond with words. He stepped forward and placed himself directly between Adaeze and the 3 men. He stood completely still. He had grown up around rough men in a shipping family, and he had learned, very practically, that stillness communicates more than aggression. The first hit came fast. He took it, his head snapped to the side. He straightened. He did not move his feet. That stillness, that absolute refusal to be moved, cracked something open inside Adaeze. Something ancient and fierce that her grandmother had planted, and Lagos had watered, and every hard year had brought to full, blazing life. She stepped forward. She spoke to Emeka in Igbo, not loudly, not frantically, but with a cold precision that made the 2 men beside him exchange an uncomfortable glance. She listed names, dates, account numbers she had memorized. She told him about the prosecutor who had been building a case for 2 years and had been waiting for exactly what Adaeze was holding. When she finished, the street was very quiet. Emeka looked at her for a long time. Then he turned and walked away, and his men followed, and the night swallowed them. Adaeze turned to Joon-seo. His lip was cut. He was pressing his fingers against it, calculating the damage. "You didn't move," she said, and her voice broke on the last word. "I wasn't going to," he said simply. She touched his face, carefully, the way you touch something precious that has been hurt for your sake. Her fingers were warm against his skin. "He said you'll leave," she whispered. "He said you're a foreigner and eventually you'll go back and I'll be worse than he found me." Joon-seo was quiet for a moment. "What do you think?" he asked. She looked at him, this quiet, careful man who had stayed in a plastic hospital chair through the night, who had walked toward her across a ballroom without hesitating, who had taken a hit without moving his feet. I think, she said, that the man who left me for dead was the Nigerian man who claimed to love me. And the man who stood between me and 3 men was the Korean stranger who owed me nothing. His eyes held hers. I'm in love with you, she said. That is the most honest thing I know right now. Something moved across his face. Not surprise, relief. The relief of a man who has been holding his breath for months. I know, he said softly. I've known for a while. I was waiting for you to find it too. Emeka was arrested 11 days later. The documents were real, every page. The flash drive from her grandmother's bag was handed to the prosecutor who had been building the case, and what Adaeze had been carrying alone became the foundation of something much larger. There were delays, legal complications, days when the system seemed designed to protect everyone except the woman at the center of it, but there were also allies. A female prosecutor who needed exactly what Adaeze had, a journalist, a nonprofit that helped women entangled in financial crime by men who weaponized trust. Adaeze testified. She was afraid every single day of those weeks. She was afraid in the car on the way to the courthouse. She was afraid sitting outside the room waiting to be called. She carried the fear the way her grandmother had taught her to carry heavy things steadily, without letting it own her posture. In the back of the courtroom sat Ifoma, her cousin. The one who had warned her from the beginning that Korean men visit and leave. She had not said she was coming. She had not told Adaeze she was wrong to trust. She simply sat there, arms folded, eyes fierce in the back row, the way family shows up when it matters, without making a speech about it. When Adaeze walked out of that courthouse, Ifoma was the first person she embraced. I still have opinions, Ifoma said into her shoulder. I know, Adaeze said. But he didn't leave. No, Adaeze said. He didn't. Joon-seo's mother arrived from Busan 6 weeks after the trial. He had not asked her to come. She came because mothers come when they need to see something with their own eyes, and no phone call was going to be sufficient for what she needed to assess. She was a small woman. Precise in every movement, eyes that evaluated everything immediately and revealed nothing until she chose to reveal it. The lunch Joon-seo arranged carried the careful tension of a man who has built something precious and is watching 2 forces approach it from opposite sides. His mother sat across from Adaeze. She looked at her the way she looked at everything, completely, without flinching. She asks how you take your tea, Joon-seo translated. Hot, Adaeze said, no sugar. My grandmother said sugar in tea is a shortcut and shortcuts are lazy, he translated. His mother listened. Then her eyes sharpened with something that was not quite warmth yet, but was the thing that comes just before warmth. My mother said the same, she said quietly, a small moment. But the table felt different after it. Then his mother set down her cup. She looked at Adaeze directly and spoke in Korean. Joon-seo's expression shifted slightly as he translated. She says she did not come here to give her blessing easily. She says she came because her son has not looked like himself in 2 years, and in the last 3 months, he sounds like himself again on the telephone. She wants to know what you want from him. The table was very still. Adaeze did not look away from his mother. She answered without hesitation. I want him to keep being the man who stayed, she said. I don't want to change him. I don't want to take him from his family. I want to build something that has enough room for all of it, his world and mine, without either of us having to disappear. He translated every word. His mother was quiet for a long time. She looked at her tea, she looked at her son, she looked back at Adaeze. Then she spoke in Korean again, 4 words, and Joon-seo closed his eyes briefly before translating. She says take care of each other, not permission given lightly, not full acceptance delivered with a bow. Something more real than either, a woman choosing, carefully, to open a door she had every reason to keep closed. Because the person standing outside, it had answered her hardest question without blinking. They returned to the pier on a Sunday evening, 3 months after the night he had found her there. The light was the low golden kind that Lagos produces in the hour before dark, the kind that makes everything look like something worth keeping. The water below was calm. The wooden planks were warm and dry beneath their feet. She stood at the exact edge where he had found her. She was not afraid of the spot. She had come back to it the way her grandmother had taught her. Go back to the place that broke you and let it see you are still standing. He stood beside her. Do you ever think about that night? She asked. Every day, he said. What do you think about? He was quiet for a moment in the way he was quiet when choosing words that mattered. I think about how long I had been walking past things, he said, my own feelings, people who needed something I could have given. I was very good at keeping moving. That night I stopped. And everything I had been walking past for years, it caught up to me because I was finally standing still. She turned to look at him. "Why didn't you call me?" he said softly. Not an accusation anymore. Something between them now, a question. They returned to the way you revisit a place that permanently changed you, just to feel how far you have traveled. She took his hand. He held it the way he did everything, deliberately, completely present. "I didn't know yet," she said, "that you would come. And now," she rested her head against his shoulder. "Now I know," she said, "you always come. There is a kind of love that does not ask you to become someone else. It finds you exactly where you fell, and it stays until you remember how to stand." It crosses oceans and languages, and the complicated distance between two people who have both been hurt before and learned to protect themselves in the wrong direction. It is not easy love. But easy love does not change you. This kind does. Next time call, someone is already walking toward you. For every love that crossed a border nobody believed it could cross. This one is for you. Thank you for listening to this story. If it meant something to you, there's more like it here. You're always welcome to come back for more.